I've realized that there's this mistake I keep making, and this is not the first time I've made this mistake, and I need to stop doing it, and that is planning review videos before I've actually read the book. This probably wouldn't be an issue for most people who just like read a book, go, that was cool, I have thoughts, I'm gonna make a video. But because my brain is stupid and gets ridiculously stressed out if I don't have a plan of every video I'm gonna make for the next month, I make plans and I'm like, I'm gonna read Mansfield Park, and I'll do a video about it for Jane Austen July. And don't get me wrong, I'm super excited. I'm glad I read Mansfield Park. But somehow I always choose the hardest books to review when I do this, and I don't know why. Hi everyone, Rosie here. Welcome back to my channel. As my little intro self-rant will have told you, I just read Mansfield Park for Jane Austen July. It was one of the group reads, and I was like, well, I've never read it. Of course I've got to participate. And now I'm going to try and talk about it. Might succeed, might fail, we'll see. Let's just get into this. Mansfield Park is the story of Fanny Price, who at the age of 10 is basically adopted by her richer relatives. She's the oldest daughter of a woman who did not make a good choice in marriage and is now overrun with children and has no money to take care of them. So her aunt and her rich uncle are like, I know what we should do. Let's just adopt one of the children. Let's take the oldest daughter and like take her off her mother's hands. Which, okay, slight tangent, I'm obviously not in favor of using your older children, especially your older daughters, as mini parents. But like, why would you think the oldest daughter would be the most useful child to take off a mother's hands? I guess it's that she was close in age to their own children and they didn't want to deal with like a small child. But in order to help this woman out, you've just taken away her most helpful child. Fanny is taken in by her family, the Bertrams, and then basically spends the next 8 years being disregarded and disrespected by everyone. She has one aunt, not the aunt who's actually adopted her, just like her second aunt who just like lives in the area and is a general busybody and awful person who spends all of her time telling Fanny how lucky and grateful she is for everything while also treating Fanny super horribly. Her cousins are like at best ignoring her and at worst kind of bullying her. Her aunt and uncle basically don't pay any attention to her. It's just not a good situation, and Fanny is like the most timid, sweet child who just wants to please everybody and like not get in anyone's way, so she takes all this to heart and goes, oh yes, I really am terribly grateful for this treatment that they're giving me, which is like awful, and just becomes even more of a doormat than she already was. So, you know, that's a thing. Amongst all of this, the only person to show this child any affection whatsoever is her older cousin Edmund. He's the second oldest son of the family who's adopted her, and he's about 6 years older than her, and he does seem like a genuinely nice person. He's like, wait, this poor child, this 10-year-old child who's just been removed from her family, brought to a part of the country where she's never been, made to live with family that she has never met, and she's miserable. And everyone's going around like, well, aren't you happy to be in such a nicer house? And it's like, well, anyway, Edmund is nice to her and takes an interest in her and encourages her and is sort of like, hey, let's make you happier. He encourages her love of reading and like guides her on what to read. And then, after years and years have passed, and once Fanny's in her late teens and her cousins are also in their late teens and early 20s, a pair of siblings, Henry and Maria Crawford, arrive in the neighborhood and basically shit gets messy. This book read so much more like high school drama than any of the other Jane Austens I've read, which this is only my third. I've also read Emma and Persuasion, but this one was like, wow, you could tell me that this is a modern contemporary YA about teens having messy teen drama, and I would buy it because that is the vibe of most of this book. That being said, this book also feels like it has so much scope to reread it, to find new elements, to consider things deeply, to delve into the details and the subtext and what's actually going on in this book. It definitely has potential there. Whether you want to look at the interpersonal relationships between Fanny and her cousins and the other young people, or the involvement of her family in the slave trade because her wealthy uncle is wealthy because he owns a plantation with slaves in the Caribbean. There are so many elements to this book that you could really dive into and discuss. And I'm not really gonna try and do any of that. honestly, I very much feel reading this book like I would need to read it again to try and start to form actual thoughts about it and to try and actually have insightful ideas about it. I mean, it's Jane Austen. There's been so much written about her work, and I really don't think there's anything that I'm going to pick out in a first reading that has not already been discussed in detail. I am going to link down below to Emrita's video about colonialism in Jane Austen, which heavily refers to this book, because that is a fascinating watch and you should definitely go see what she has to say. So if I'm not actually really going to review this book, what am I going to do? Basically, I just want to chat about it. I'm going to less review, more personal reflections, just off the cuffiness, I guess. The first point I want to talk about is the character of Fanny herself. From what I've seen online, she's not that popular. A lot of people really do not like her as a heroine, and that's fair. I get that. She is a total wet blanket. She is the most holier-than-thou, buzzkill character I have read so far as a heroine in Jane Austen, which again, only 3, but like, she's a very different tone from Anne Elliot and Emma Woodhouse. And from what I know, I think from the others as well. But I can't bring myself to dislike her. Maybe I just see too much of how I think I probably would have reacted and the type of person I would have become in her situation, and therefore all I can feel is just like pity. This poor girl has only ever had one person in her life be nice to her, and that one person had apparently by the age of 16 completely taken on the persona of the second son who goes into the church. And like, can we blame her for falling under his influence and listening to him and absorbing his ideas about the world? No, of course not. This poor 10-year-old child who everyone is neglecting and being mean to, and there's one nice person, of course you're gonna look up to that person. Of course you're going to say, wow, yeah, he's so smart and he's so wise, and of course I'm gonna listen to what he has to say. And also, can we blame her for having the backbone of a cooked noodle when she has spent, well, the first half of her life basically being ignored by her parents, and the second half being ignored and actively abused by her family? I don't think it's implied that they physically abuse her, but her Aunt Norris definitely is like full-on verbal abuse all the time, and everyone is always tearing Fanny down and always talking about how stupid she is and how useless she is and how she's nowhere near as pretty as her cousins and how lucky she is to be in such good company and all. Like, can we blame her for having zero self-confidence? No. I feel like anyone would have zero self-confidence in that situation. I didn't love the resolution of this book, but at the same time, if it makes Fanny happy, I want that for her. I just want this precious child to be appreciated and seen for all of who she is and loved for who she is. And honestly, for most of the book, I just wanted to scoop her up and be like, hey, it's okay. You can come. We're gonna chill out over here. We don't have to be loud. We don't have to be sociable. We're just gonna sit here with our books. Here, let me just be kind to you because you deserve to be treated with kindness as a human being, not because I'm trying to manipulate you or want something from you. I just want to be nice to you because that's how you should be treated, and once you've had a bit of time to relax, let's get you to a therapist. I certainly don't want to be like Fanny, or even necessarily would want to be friends with her. I can't dislike her because I just want to take care of her. The other thing I want to mention in this video is that this one feels much more like a triumph of morality plot than the other 2 Austens I've read, and I don't really know how to feel about this or how to think about this. As a modern reader, this whole subject is really hard to consider. It's very difficult to look at how Austen is portraying these various themes and these various characters because I innately have a modern perspective on all this. And even trying to think about things in the standards of Austen's time, I still just like don't know how I feel about all this. The central conflict of the pious and moral and dutiful Edmund and Fanny versus the improper and loose and overly flirtatious and scandal-ridden rest of the young people, it just felt over the top and exaggerated to me. Much more than Persuasion or Emma, I really didn't find much in this one to relate to. That's obviously not a criteria to judge the book on necessarily, but for me, it just didn't really work. On one side, Fanny and Edmund, who, from everything I can tell, we're supposed to sympathize with and we're supposed to be siding with and rooting for, are just so stick in the mud. If you're hearing rain noise, I apologize, but it is way too hot to close my window, so it's like some cool background vibes. I certainly would never want anyone to be bullied and never personally want to be cruel or bully anyone. But these two are honestly people who, if I knew their modern counterparts, I would just quietly and politely avoid. Like, you know, you wouldn't be cruel to their face, you wouldn't be rude to their face, you wouldn't do anything like that, but I certainly wouldn't seek them out as acquaintances. And that's not the only way of measuring a protagonist or seeing if they're an interesting one that you like or compelling to read about. But in this case, I didn't connect with them. All of this stuff, I was just thinking like, oh my god, chill out a bit. You do not need to be this uptight about everything. But on the other side, among the, I don't think call them bad guys, but the people we're not supposed to sympathize with, the various reasons that we're not supposed to sympathize with them just did not work for me. Either they were super one note and just flat and boring, and I was like, okay, I mean, they're not a nice person, but why do I care? Or they're incredibly, like, extreme, and it's like, okay, well, yeah, of course, that's not a good way to behave, and I see why we would like to condemn that, sure, but it just feels very over the top. Or, quite frankly, they just seemed like the best people in the book. So I don't want to spoil anything, but I could not get on board with the Mary Crawford hate from Edmund and Fanny. Fanny keeps describing these things she sees in Mary as like proof of her terrible character, and she is an awful person and like has no morals. And I'm just like, Mary and her sister, Mrs. Grant, seem like the only people in the book that I would actually want to spend time with. Like, yeah, they're not perfect. They're not amazing people. They have flaws, but they actually seem pleasant to be around. And for all of the hate that Fanny sends their way, and Edmund too, I'm just like, they actually seem like kind people. They actually seem kinder than you do. So, I don't know. Maybe I need to reread this again, and then on a second read I will absolutely hate these characters, but I just didn't like the conflict in that sense. So basically, the people I'm supposed to care about are so boring that it's hard to sympathize with them. And the people I'm supposed to see as villainous, I'm mostly like, yeah, but only by the standards of your time. And even thinking about it through that lens, it's just kind of like, chill a little. The wrap up of that sort of thread of the story, the way everything concludes at the end, just felt really over the top. Like, yes, of course our hero and heroine have to come out on top and have their happy ending and be proved right, but they were so extremely proved right that it just felt a bit ridiculous. So like I said, not at all a review, just my personal reflections and rough thoughts after having read this book. If I ever get around to rereading it, I would like to do it with a more close and careful study look at it. But honestly, I don't know if that will be the case, if I'll ever get around to rereading this. I mean, probably. I hope to live for another many decades, so I imagine I'll want to reread Jane Austen in that time. But this one just was the first Austen where I didn't really like it, and I mean, it was bound to happen. That's okay. I don't know how to end this video now, so I'm just gonna say, let me know down below. Have you read Mansfield Park? If yes, what is your argument for or against it? I would love to discuss down below. And if you're participating in Jane Austen July, let me know what you guys are reading for it. And as always, if you liked this video, please give it a like down below. If you would like to see more of my videos, please hit subscribe, and thank you for watching.